Hello and welcome to episode 205 of my podcast all about knitting and crochet and my yarn shop here in Wiesbaden, Germany. I'm Kiko and today is October 23rd, 2023. Today I'm wearing a fairly old shawl and a rather new pullover and another accessory. So again, I'm showing three things, but I'll start with the shawl as usual. This is a very interesting shawl, I think, out of a very nice book that I will be linking underneath the video, where she knit or designed quite a few of those shawls that are sort of knit the unusual direction, not lengthwise, but from the width. Not quite sure how to express that, but I think you can see what I've done. So with this shawl, I've actually used, I think it's all leftover yarn, either from other projects or some single balls of yarn that I happen to have. And so it's a mix of many different yarns, different colors, different stitch patterns, and it's a mix of knitting and crochet. And I don't think I've ever done a project. I had done a project before I did this where I mixed so many different things. So I don't know if I've ever done, apart from the two shawls that I've made, I don't think I've ever mixed knitting and crochet quite as much as with these two shawls. But I like doing that, so maybe I'll get to do more of that in the future. We'll see. Anyway, so this is, you cast on the stitches for the length of your shawl, so it's sometimes a bit difficult to know how many stitches to cast on. I think I just did exactly what was in the book. I used the same needle size, and then I just used different yarns, different colors, and then different stitch patterns. And then at some point I cast off the stitches and then I crocheted, and then I picked up stitches to go back to knitting. And then there's another bit of crochet here, and that's it. I think the rest is knit. And then the short ends, there was another crochet bit. So I did this edging on the short edges of the shawl. So this is the same yarn that I used for this crochet bit. And yeah, I really enjoyed doing that. And I felt it goes well with this pullover, which I'll talk about in a minute. But before I do that, I'll show the other accessory that I'm wearing. And these are these wrist warmers. And I knit these out of lace weight alpaca by Hansa Farm. So this is a very fine yarn, and I used, I think, 64 stitches. There is, I don't have a project page for these wrist warmers. I'm not quite sure why not, but there was a time when I was thinking of writing the pattern down for these wrist warmers, and maybe that's why I didn't make a project page, because I was thinking of putting them on the pattern page, but I never managed to write the pattern down. And since then I've realized that writing patterns is not something that I enjoy doing, that I want to do. So what I do enjoy doing is making videos. So there is a tutorial video on how to knit these. Right now I'm not quite sure whether I actually did an English version. I should check that out, and if you're interested, I could make that. But it's not a new pattern, so if you find the pattern somewhere else, it's quite easy to just make these wrist warmers, because all you need to know is how many stitches to cast on, and then how to do the pattern. And if you find it somewhere else, for example, there is a sock pattern out there, which with a difficult name on knitty.com. That's a free pattern that uses the same stitch pattern. So yeah, the pattern's not really special or unique, but it's very nice, I think, and I love all the wrist warmers that I knit in this pattern. I've also knit some using DK weight alpaca yarn. I did some out of cotton for somebody who's allergic to wool. So yeah, many different things you can make. And as they have the same color as the ribbing in the pullover, I decided to wear them today. Yeah, but I'll take them off now to show you the pullover. And this is a new to me pullover. So it's the first time I'm wearing it on a podcast. And but it was not knit by me. If it was knit by me, you'd probably seen it while I was knitting it. But a friend of mine knitted it. But she did not knit it especially for me, but she knit the pullover for her son. And he's still growing, so he's grown out of the pullover, and then it went to his sister, and she's still smaller than me, but she can't wear the wool. She doesn't, she's very sensitive to wool, and then she decided that I can have it. So now I have it. And I actually did a little bit of knitting on the pullover because my friend, this is a Raglano, which is a free pattern by Nicolor. And she knit it the way the pattern said. So she did the yoke, then she knit the front and back, then she knit the sleeves, made sure they fit. And then last she picked up the stitches to knit the neckband. And that was sort of the mistake, because before the neckband was in there, this was all a bit more relaxed. So the sleeves seemed to be fitting. But once she put the ribbing in, it pulled up. So the whole thing got pulled together a bit, and then the sleeves were too short. So she was complaining the sleeves are too short, and what do I do? And I said, well, you have to undo the ribbing because it's in a different color. Then you can add some knitting, and then you knit the ribbing again. It's not really a big deal, but she was quite frustrated because she spent a long time knitting the pullover, and she's not confident with unraveling something and picking up the stitches. So I said, I'll do that for her. And then I said, well, I can knit the little bit. It was just like 2 centimeters, and then the ribbing. So I said, well, let me just quickly do that for you. And I knit it for her. And then, because I love trying things on, I just tried it on after I'd finished the knitting, and I realized this pullover fits me. It's as if she had knit it for me. So it's fairly long. It's a bit longer than I usually knit my pullovers, but that's fine when it's a bit colder. It's also a bit tighter than I usually knit my pullovers. I don't think it's too tight. It's just a bit more, it hugs my figure a bit more than I'm usually comfortable with, but I don't mind. The sleeves have the perfect length for my arms. It's because I have arms like a 10-year-old. Yeah, so as her daughter couldn't wear the yarn on her skin, I was gifted the pullover, and I'm really happy now because this was definitely my favorite color in the Black Dragon series. So this is opal yarn. This is from the Black Dragon series. One of the Black Dragon series had these beautiful turquoise and blue colors, and yeah, I never got to knit anything with it because I sold all the yarn, partly to her, but now I have a whole pullover out of that yarn. Really happy with that. So let's put everything back on so I don't get cold. Yeah, so that's what I'm wearing. Did I say that the shawl is 11 years old? So I knit that in 2012. And if you look on my Ravelry page, which is linked underneath, you can see that I knit it in about 10 days, which is a bit crazy, I think. But that's the way I sometimes did things. I usually had several things on the go, but sometimes I would just concentrate on one thing and do nothing else until that was done. And filming these podcast episodes helps me to keep everything going at the same time. Yeah, but that's all about what I'm wearing today. Then on to finished objects. I have 2 finished objects. I'll start with the slightly older one. And it's not really old. I think took me like 2 or 3 weeks to knit the hat. But it's the hat that I knit from the book that teaches you different techniques. And the technique that I learned for this hat was how to do a different cast on so that the purl stitches sort of look like purl stitches from the very beginning, and the knit stitches look like knit stitches. With this thin yarn, it's not very obvious, and I already said I'm not quite sure whether it's worth the trouble. But on the other hand, it's not that much more difficult, so it was okay to have done that. And if you knit a hat with big yarn, I'm pretty sure it'll make quite a difference. Yeah, so I knit tons and tons of ribbing. Then I started the color work, just using the one colorful opal yarn instead of switching between 2 contrast colors. still really happy with how that worked out. And then once you have the number of rows that the pattern specifies, you start doing the decreases, which I think look really nice. So you always do a double center decrease or something like that. So the contrast color sits on top. You do that until all the stitches are, or most of the stitches are gone. Really like that. I already said the contrast color is opal sock yarn. The blue is an alpaca yarn, either the alpaca fingering or the alpaca sock yarn by Hansa Farm. Not quite sure which it is, but it's really nice and warm and soft. So really, really happy with the hat. I'll just quickly show you the inside. So all the floats from the contrast color, well, basically it's floats with both colors, but there's fewer stitches in the contrast colors, so you can't really see the main color floats. But there are so many floats that the hat is like double thickness and double the warmth, which I think is fantastic. Yeah, still have to wash, and I won't block it. I never block hats. I just wash them and then put them down to dry. I sometimes think I could put like a towel inside the hat so it doesn't get these creases, but it doesn't really get creases anyway. So I usually forget about the towel and just put it down to dry. And I think once I do that, maybe this won't be quite as pointy, but even if it is, doesn't matter. It's not too bad. I think the pattern calls for a pom-pom, which I won't do because I don't like them so much. Yeah, but that's my first finished object. And oh yeah, I'll just quickly show the book again. I'll be linking the English version underneath the video, and let's quickly have a look at the hat in the book. So this is what the hat looks like in the original colors. So it's quite different, and you can see there is a pom-pom, and maybe it would make sense, but we'll see. Probably not. But just to quickly show one other project, I'll talk about something in a few minutes to explain why I'm showing this. So another technique that you can learn from this book is to do a double sort of ribbing or edging, something like that. So here's a pair of fingerless mitts, and this is like a double thickness edge. And yeah, I'll talk about that in a few minutes. Almost dropped my book. Yeah, the other finished project, not a big surprise either. Last week, I already showed you seedling number 1, and she's now joined by seedling number 2. So originally, I was thinking of keeping this one to myself. So it's basically my favorite colors, and the yarn was given to me by a friend years ago, and I always meant this to be for my sister. So while I was knitting this one, I tried to hide it from her. So when I was knitting on the feet, I think I'd already finished the head without the mouth and without this, and it was on the table. I tried to always put something on top of it when my sister was around, but then I must have moved something that I put on top without noticing, and then she came and sat down exactly where this was lying, and she's like, "Oh, who's that for? It's so sweet." And then of course I couldn't hide the fact that it's for her, and this is going to be her birthday present next month, and I've already told her, so it's okay to say it in the video. And then her first reaction was that I can never ever give this one away, so that the two could get together. But that brought me or gave me the idea to give this one as a birthday present to my brother-in-law, so they both have one, and then they can always be together. And she liked that idea too. And my brother-in-law doesn't watch any of my videos, so I can tell that here, and he won't know. Yeah, so these are 2 seedlings. In the pattern, there are 3 sizes. I did the small and the medium one. I'm not going to knit the big one. Not really interested in having a bigger one. But last week, the next pattern was released, which is beans. And now my goal is to knit one of the beans. And then there'll be a third pattern at the end of the month, and that's droplet. And then I'll probably keep bean and droplet to myself, And then my sister and her husband can have those too. And it's a lot of fun. This is also the soft merino. It's a merino yarn by Wollerödel, leftover yarns from old or very old projects. Yeah, that's it. That's my finished objects for today. Then on to works in progress. And I am very happy to announce that I've knit on all my projects that I'm currently working on. There are some long time projects that I haven't touched in a long time, and I still haven't touched those. So I do have to decrease my number of projects so I can get to those. But for the 2 projects that I finished, I've started 2 new ones. Sorry to announce that. Anyway, socks. Instant Crush socks. That's a bonus pattern from the Sock Madness this year. This is sock number 1. I'm using the alpaca sock yarn by Hansa Farm, and I added quite a bit to the second foot. So last time I think I was still in the first repeat. Now I've finished the second repeat. There's going to be a third repeat of the pattern, 1, 2, 3, and then just a little bit. Then the heel, then the different pattern, then this and that, and so on. So it'll still take a few days, but very happy that I've picked it up again. The next pair of socks are the film reel socks. I don't even know which number we're on at the moment, but I finished the first sock in this grey water something. What's it called? I can't see it. Okay, anyway, it's one of the new series by Opal, and I used the grey yarn to knit another pair of film reel socks for my older nephew. And in the ribbing, I now had this bit that has these lightning bolt kind of pattern, and it's actually more or less the same as in the film reel, so that's really interesting. And then the next bit is again this light and dark, or rather light bit of the yarn. So I expect the next film to be fairly dark, because there is always this pattern, then a lighter bit and a darker bit. So I'm guessing that I'll have a fairly dark film next. Then we'll have this pattern in the heel, which probably will make it look completely different. Pretty sure there won't be any of those lightning thingies once I start doing short rows. And then we'll probably have again those 2 films on the foot, and then this could end up in the toe again. Oh no, this should be the 3rd film in the foot because it's a guy's sock. There'll be 3 films, that's right. So probably the last film reel should have this pattern again. Very interesting. Yeah, quite happy that I'm still working on that. And the last sock for this section is the Squiggly Matness sock that hardly looks like Squiggly Matness anymore. I finished her socks in my sock couple this year, and I've started his socks. Last time I was still working on the ribbing. I've now added in the main color, which is this rainforest color from this year, and I'm mostly just continuing the rib pattern, but I added in 2 contrast color stripes, but those are just going straight down, so there won't be any squiggliness about it. And it's just the 2 knit stitches here and here, and the rest will just be a very simple rib pattern sock. I'll do the same heel as with her socks, which I think, yeah, that was the heel that was in the pattern, so I'll do that for his socks as well, and then just keep this pattern going for the top of the foot. And I hope it won't take too long to finish these socks. So much for socks now. Now on to new projects. The next 2 projects are out of sock yarn and fairly small. So I'll show them here. And the first of those are this is going to be a pair of fingerless mitts. And I brought the book. So this pattern is out of the book Sock Yarn One-Skein Wonders, which Sock Yarn One-Skein Wonders. This is one of my absolute favorite books ever. I've knit quite a few things out of this book already, and there's still a lot of projects that I am still planning to knit. And one of the things that I've always wanted to knit are these fingerless mitts. So it's a fairly simple pattern, but there's lots and lots of beads in there. The beads in the books are fairly small, so probably looks a little more elegant than mine because I chose bigger beads, so it looks different. So one of the reasons I chose this pattern is that I'm knitting this as part of the pattern battle over in the Opal Abo group. So with that pattern battle, what happens is that one colorway of the Opal subscription yarn gets chosen. This time it was this colorway, so you can only get this colorway when you have this Opal subscription, and everybody taking part in the pattern battle has to use this color, but has to use a different pattern than all the others. And when I started thinking about a pattern, there were already 69 patterns that had been announced or put down. So I thought if I go to that book, I don't think too many Germans have that book or knit from it. So I chose one of those patterns. And as I said, it's a pattern that I've wanted to knit for a long time anyway. And this is one of my favorite colorways out of the last box, subscription box. So I wanted to do something for myself. And in order to decide which beads to use, I actually did a gauge swatch or a bead swatch. And usually when I knit beads or crochet beads into something, I will put the bead on a crochet hook and then grab the stitch, place the bead on the stitch, and then knit or crochet the stitch. But with this pattern, you're supposed to place the beads onto the yarn before you start, and then you pull up the beads as you need them. So I chose 5 different colors of beads and strung 4 beads each color onto the yarn, and then I cast on and I just knit this little bit in garter stitch. And when you're knitting garter stitch with beads, what you do is you add the beads on the row back, and then they will show up on the other side. And so this is what the other side looks like. So I thought it's quite nice to see what the different color beads look like with the yarn. And some people thought it was intentional that the green beads are on the green yarn and the pink beads are on the pink yarn, but I didn't do that at all. I just cast on, knit a few rows, and then just added the beads every 4 rows without checking the color of the yarn. And the order of the beads on the yarn was already determined. I couldn't change that anyway, even if I had wanted to. So yeah, that was really nice. And I decided to go for these pink beads. But I might use those color beads, those greenish, green-blue color beads for the second mitt. It's an idea. So the next thing I did is I strung up 200 and something beads onto the yarn, which looks like this. So it kind of looks like a necklace. So these are the beads that I decided to use, and then I started knitting. And that's the reason I showed you the other project in the first book, is because the mitts actually start with this double edging. So you knit a bit, then you do 1 row of yarn over knit together, you knit another bit, and then you fold it in half, and you knit 1 stitch with 1 cast on stitch, and then you get this very nice picot edge. That's what I did. And then I started knitting the pattern, and this is what it looks like with my huge beads. I mean, they're not really huge, but I think they're quite a bit bigger than the ones in the book. And when I started knitting the pattern, the placement of the bead I think it wasn't explained really well, but maybe it was just me not understanding what they're saying. So at first I placed the beads the way it seemed easiest to do, but then I noticed that because you have to also do like a mini cable, what happens is that the bead sat on a bit of yarn that sort of stretches across the knit stitches. And that means I can move the beads from up there to down here, and I can sort of decide where I want the beads to be. And I was talking to friends and I was saying I would probably keep playing around with the beads and moving them this way and that way. And I wasn't quite sure whether that was the way it was supposed to be. So I tried a different way of placing the beads, and that's what I did in this last row of beads. And now the beads sit on top of this bit of yarn that goes across. And that means they sit tight. They can't move around. And I was still not quite sure which I like better. But then a friend of mine, clever friend of mine, said it's probably not very good for the yarn if the bead keeps moving up and down. And I could sort of wear down the yarn. And that I thought was a really good idea. So I decided to push all the beads to that spot on top of this bit of yarn. So on this side, I've already done all that. So you can see that there's a bit of yarn sort of sitting underneath each of the beads, but it means the beads they stay in place and they don't move around, and it probably looks a bit tidier as well. So I am going to do all that, to do the same thing with the beads over here once I finish my videos, and yeah, I finished explaining about those. Yeah, otherwise I'm really happy. This is sort of the cuff. I can now start with the thumb increases and then continue knitting. Yeah, so that's the first new cast on. The second new cast on, so this is something I had planned. I've always wanted to do the pattern. I did want to take part in the pattern battle, so that's a reason for this new cast on. The other new cast on was very unexpected, and that has to do with an old friend of mine who we used to go to school together in 5th and 6th grade, so that's like forever ago. And then later on from 7th to 13th grade, we were in, we say parallel classes, but I think you know what I'm trying to say. So we weren't in contact a lot, but we sort of knew about each other. And I hadn't heard from him in decades, literally. And then some time ago, he contacted me and he'd found out that I have this yarn shop that I do the videos, and he studied physics and he works with color. It's really hard to explain what he does, but I think he works with printers, and he's trying to find out how you can get a color that you have somewhere else to get the same color onto paper, something like that. But last week he came by and visited me, and he looked at all the yarn and he was really interested in the different colors, and he said if he had tiny little pieces of knitting from each of the solid colors, he would love to check them out, play around with them. I think that's exactly what he said. And so I said, well, I can do that. It's no problem. And then I knit a little bit and asked him, is that what you were thinking of? And he said those would be perfect. So I think his words were stamp sized, but he said that was big enough. So what I did is I cast on 12 stitches. I knit 11 rows in stockinette stitch and then cast off. And it doesn't matter that it's rolling because he's probably going to glue it down somehow so he can there's one word, examine, that's what I was looking for, that he can examine them. So otherwise I would have done garter stitch for them to lie flat, but he wanted as straight a fabric as possible, so that's why I went for stockinette stitch. And I think I knit 1 or 2 while he was here and gave them to him so he could start playing around with them. But I promised to knit one of these for each of the colors that Opal have. So I've done those 4 during the last week, and I will just keep showing you tiny little like gauge swatches in all the colors, and yeah, and then I'll send them to him or he'll come and pick them up. I don't know yet. Yeah, so this is a very unexpected and not a very big new project, but there are quite a few colors that Opal dyes, so I'll be busy for a while, I think. yeah, so these were the new cast-ons. Then on to old projects that I have worked on. And the next project on my list is the Geogradient Mystery Knit Along by Stephen West. And I do hope that all the controversy about this clue 1 is going to die down now and people will just enjoy their knitting and concentrate on clue 2 and 3. And then this week we'll get clue 4, but I'm lagging behind quite a bit, but I don't mind. So I finished clue 1. This is what you already know from last week. The only thing I added were those last 5 garter stripes. And then I put half the stitches on hold and used the other half to knit the first half of clue 2. I finished that, so I've just put the stitches of the other 2 sides of the square onto my working needle, so I can now start the second part or the second half of clue 2. And this is my first half of clue 2. So we knit across 2 of the sides of the square. We kept the increases in the corner so that the shape stays the same around the corner, but where we started knitting, we cast on 3 stitches for an I-cord, and then we decreased 1 stitch per row so that the whole thing is not really square shaped anymore, because to be a square this should go up and over there. So this bit is cut off from the square, and it'll be the same in this direction. And yeah, so that's very interesting. Then we have stripes of eyelets and reverse garter stitch. Again, we were supposed to do colors 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. I did not do that. I chose to do colors 3, 1, 4, 2, 3, 1, 4, 2, just for fun. I wanted the 2 dark colors for the eyelets so they sort of disappear into the background a little bit, and I wanted my 2 lighter colors to be in the reverse stockinette so they're more visible. I did not add any mohair yarn in there, but I'm pretty sure you'll already have noticed that there are beads in the knitting. So I decided to do every 3rd row of eyelets, I'll add some beads. I had these beautiful dark grey beads lying around, so I used those. When I finished the 2nd row of beads, my little box of beads had 7 beads left. So I was quite nervous, thinking they may not be enough to do the whole row, but they were enough. So for the second half of clue 2, I will either have to get the same beads again or use different beads. Not quite sure what to do yet. We'll see. It probably depends. I would love to get the same beads because I really like them with my yarn. But in case I can't get them, I'll just use something else. That's okay. Okie doke. Then we come to my 2 garments that I have on the needles at the moment. And I'll start with the V-back tee, which I put over here. And I tried it on just before I started filming, and I left the long cable in there, so I thought it's a bit easier to see what the pullover looks like at the moment. So this is the V-back, this is the V-neck, which is supposed to be in the back because it's the V-back tee, and I've almost finished getting the short rows to the middle of the V. So there's just a few more, probably something like 4 or 6 more rows, and then I will have reached the middle, and then I'll have to read the instructions again, but I think that I'm almost at the ribbing. So this is one side of the pullover, and the other side looks like this. So everything is nicely on top of each other on this side. There's no short rows that you can see. This side really fits very nicely with the V-back. If I put it to the front, it always seems a bit short, but might be just the way it looks. It is very wide. I was quite surprised when I put it on. It's really very wide. So with the cable still in, with the needle still in, it looks a bit ridiculous because it sort of goes outward like this. I know it's going to look different once I've cast off the stitches and the needle is gone, and then it will hang more. But very, very interested to see what it's going to look like then. I know there's quite a contrast between this color and the other two colors, but I don't mind. I like it. That's the way I had planned it. And yeah, still very excited about knitting this and finishing the front and back. Being able to start thinking about the sleeves. Very exciting knit. And the other pullover is the summer short sleeve pullover that I am knitting. It's the Reina de Picas pattern, and it has this wonderfully patterned yoke. I should really put a longer needle in here so I can show something. So yeah, this is a very involved pattern. Every row has patterning, so there's no round where you can relax and just knit or purl or something. So takes a bit of concentration, but I like doing that. I really enjoy it. And I've now finished the second chart. There's a third chart to come. This would still be too short to be the yoke. So now I can start the third chart, and when I've finished with that, I think you're supposed to knit a few more rounds before you put the sleeve stitches aside, but we'll see. Maybe with the third chart it'll be big enough for me and I can go straight to separating sleeve and front and back stitches, but we'll see. I'll have to try it on. I love trying things on, so I told you. Okay, so that's that. And then the crochet project. I've worked on both of them a little, not too much. This is the Duinen crochet shawl that I'm doing out of hand-dyed yarn by Wolldackel. And I think last week I was saying something like I want to maybe do 3 rows in the dark color before I go back to the light color, something like that. And I think when I picked it up again after filming, I realized that I had done 4 rows of the dark color by mistake. So that wasn't planned, it just happened. But the colors are so similar, and because there's some dark in the light yarn and some light bits in the dark yarn, it doesn't really show exactly where I use which yarn, and I think it's absolutely okay. I still love the construction of this shawl, the way it sort of goes round like this, and even though the rows do get longer sometimes, they get shorter other times, and they're never too long, and it's quite fun to work on this. I think I still have to do about 50 rows, so quite a bit, but I am getting there and I just enjoy working on it, so that's good. The other crochet project is my Shelley Husband square summer pullover. That's the goal. And last week I told you my plan of repeating the last 3 rounds that I had done so far, and this is, I think I'd started this round last week, so I finished this round and then started the next round, and I kept saying that with this round you just crochet a lot of stitches and the pattern doesn't really show as much as it shows down here. So this row and this row, they're the same row, but they look different because the pattern only comes once you put the front post single crochets on top. So now those 2 rows look the same. Here they don't. Yeah, and I think I've done 3 sides of the single crochets, and then for some reason I put it down. So I have to do the 4th side, then I'll add 1 round of double crochets, and then I'll put it aside and start the next square. So looking forward to that. It's always fun to start something new, so I'll probably be more motivated once I start the new square. And then they start in the middle, they start small, so they grow quickly. That's always exciting. Okay, and that brings me to the last project, and I've taken quite a long time today. Sorry about that, hope you don't mind. That's the knit along that we do for the banana socks. We've been doing that for quite a few weeks. We will do that for some more weeks because I not only want to finish this sock, this banana sock, but I want to knit another pair in another colorway. Oh, by the way, this is another black dragon colorway, like this yarn. So it has this bit of black yarn that's spun into the yarn, and then when you knit it up, it sort of gives this, it's not like a pattern, but it sort of runs through the whole yarn and the whole project. Yeah, so this is sock number 2 for this pair, and there's one more colorway that I want to knit a pair of banana socks. And when I finish that, maybe I'll stop the knit along. Well, I never actually stop knit along, so you can always contribute, you can always knit your things and add the pictures in the Ravelry group, but I'm not quite sure whether I'll knit another pair of banana socks straight away or not. And when I start the next pair of socks, I'll start thinking about the next knit along. Yeah, but that's all I knit and crocheted last week. I hope you enjoyed the video, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye!